Nothing is fine.
She just needs to sleep.
I don't sleep. I have bad dreams.
In the 1950s, nestled near the California desert, there was a little town called Victory, where everything seemed perfect. It was a company town where families lived ideal lives. Every morning, the husbands went to work at the Victory headquarters just outside the town, while the wives stayed behind, looking after their homes and attending ballet lessons with their teacher, Shelley. The wives were never allowed to ask questions about their husband's work, and they were forbidden from visiting the headquarters. One of the happiest couples in town was Alice and Jack. They enjoyed a passionate relationship and loved hosting parties for their neighbors, especially Alice's best friend, Bunny, and her husband. Alice also had a favorite song she often hummed while doing her housework, though she couldn't remember where it came from. Sometimes the ground would shake for a few seconds, and Alice would ask Jack if it was related to the projects happening at Victory. But Jack would always avoid answering, and Alice would let it go, convinced there was nothing to worry about. One afternoon after ballet class, Alice and Bunny watched a group of men in red jumpsuits help a new neighbor move in. They also gossiped about Margaret, a woman who had become an outcast after a mysterious incident. Later, Alice noticed Margaret standing alone in her backyard, holding a toy plane and staring into space as if lost in some strange vision. Alice didn't know what to make of it, so she ignored it. When Alice went to prepare dinner, she found all the eggs in her carton were strangely empty, but she quickly forgot about it as her dinner began to burn in the oven. A few days later, Alice attended a pool party at Shelley's house and was humming her song again when Bunny suddenly asked her to stop, claiming she was tired of hearing it. Alice was confused. She realized she didn't even know what the song was, but it had always been stuck in her head. As she hummed, strange images began to appear in front of her eyes, but just as quickly, Bunny distracted her and Alice forgot about it. The party took a weird turn when Shelley and her husband Frank, the Victory CEO, made a speech to welcome the new neighbors. The speech was interrupted by Margaret, who started asking strange questions about why they were all there. Her husband quickly took her away, but the mood was already awkward. Frank tried to calm everyone down, reminding them that they were part of something special, working to change the world and build a town based on safety and order. Alice couldn't shake off her worry about Margaret and decided to check on her. She found Margaret in her house, being given some kind of medicine by her husband. Margaret seemed desperate, telling Alice that she wasn't fine, that she was having bad dreams, and that they were hiding her away. But before she could explain further, her husband closed the door in Alice's face. Alice returned to the party only to find Jack in Frank's room adjusting his tie. To her surprise, Jack started getting frisky with her right there. But things took an even stranger turn when Frank walked in and stared at them in an uncomfortable way. He left without saying a word, and Alice didn't tell Jack about the incident. The next day, while shopping with her friends, Alice overheard a conversation about Margaret's strange behavior since the accident. Bunny interrupted, explaining that it wasn't an accident. Margaret had broken the only rule they had. She took her child deep into the desert after having some sort of vision. When they found her, she was alone with her son's toy plane, and the child was nowhere to be found. Margaret swore that they had taken him away from her as punishment. Just as the conversation was getting intense, the ground shook again, but the women didn't react because they were used to it. One of them mentioned hearing rumors about the men working on weapons, but Bunny quickly shut her down, reminding them that their only job was to support their husbands and never ask questions. That night, Alice had some disturbing dreams she couldn't shake off. The next day, desperate for some fresh air, she decided to take a trolley ride, but ended up staying on it, wanting to enjoy the view of the desert. As she looked out the window, something strange happened. A plane resembling Margaret's toy appeared in the sky, falling and crashing into the desert. Alice wanted to check it out, but the bus driver refused to take her there, saying it went against the rules. Undeterred, Alice decided to walk into the desert on her own. After a long trek, she arrived at a hill with a spiral road leading to the top. She climbed it and eventually found a mysterious dome. She called for help, but no one answered. Alice was scared but determined to find answers, so she cautiously approached the dome. As her hands touched the glass walls, her body shook, and a series of disturbing images flashed in her mind. Frank's voice echoed, talking about leaving chaos behind. When Alice blinked again, she found herself back in her bed at home, confused and terrified. She went to the kitchen, where she found Jack trying to cook, explaining that he didn't want to wake her up. Alice was shocked to learn that she had already returned home when Jack came back, but she couldn't remember how. She mentioned the plane crash, but Jack brushed it off, claiming that if it had really happened, Everyone in town would be talking about it. Alice got upset, blaming it on bad dreams, and Jack distracted her with comforting touches and jokes about his cooking. The next day, while cleaning the windows, Alice was startled when the wall behind her began to move and pressed against her. Terrified, she tried to push it back, but when she blinked, everything was back to normal. It had just been a hallucination. As the phone rang, Alice picked it up to hear Margaret's voice. She warned Alice that they were all being lied to and that they should leave. Alice couldn't take it anymore, so she reminded Margaret she wasn't crazy and hung up. But the conversation haunted her, and during her next ballet class, she was shocked to see her reflection in the mirror. It was Margaret. At first, Margaret copied Alice's every move, but then she started hitting her head against the glass, making Alice panic. When Alice turned around, Margaret was gone. Later that day, Alice was at home when she saw Margaret standing on top of her house. Alice screamed at her to stop, but Margaret ignored her, and in the end, she jumped. Alice tried to reach her, but before she could get far, the men in red jumpsuits appeared and dragged her away. Alice rushed to tell Jack what happened, but he didn't believe her. Margaret's husband had told everyone she was fine, and it had just been an accident while cleaning the windows. Alice was furious that no one was taking her seriously. She demanded to know the truth, asking Jack about his job and what Victory was hiding. Jack finally snapped, refusing to answer any more questions. Alice's world is falling apart. One night, Jack yells at her, warning that answering certain questions could tear apart their perfect life together. He begs her to drop it before storming off and leaving her alone for the night. Troubled, Alice tries to escape her racing thoughts by watching TV. But instead of finding peace, she's plunged into a disturbing hallucination. She's drowning in a pool, trapped just like she was in the suffocating wall. Before she can make sense of it, she blinks, and suddenly, she's standing by the window as if she had tried to leave. The next morning, while wrapping up dinner leftovers, Alice's hands seem to move on their own, wrapping her body in plastic. When she snaps back to reality, she quickly removes the wrap, realizing she's losing control of herself. She sighs deeply, accepting the truth. Her mind is slipping. Moments later, Jack shows up with Dr. Collins for a checkup. The doctor chalks it up to stress from witnessing Margaret's fall, dismissing her fears as nothing more than the mind-warping reality under the weight of grief. Despite Alice's protests, Collins insists she's just overwhelmed and offers her medication. But both Alice and Jack refuse. As Dr. Collins talks, Alice notices something odd. He has files about Margaret in his briefcase. She asks about it, and Collins explains that Margaret had suffered from outbursts and paranoia, which had caused trouble for her husband, eventually getting him fired from Victory. She had been sent away for help, but Alice's curiosity is piqued. After Collins leaves, he forgets his briefcase, and Alice seizes the chance to search it for answers. However, when Collins returns, Alice quickly covers up, pretending she was just about to return it. Thankfully, her cover is believable, and Collins leaves without suspecting a thing. Back at home, Alice's investigation into Margaret's files proves useless. Every page is blacked out. In frustration, Alice burns the papers in the fireplace, drinking whiskey to drown her guilt. Later, while taking a bath, her mind starts to drift, and the disturbing images of her hallucinations return, this time mingled with memories of happier moments with Jack. Just when she's about to lose herself again, Jack comes home playing some music. His presence snaps her back to reality, but she's still shaken when he unexpectedly asks if they should have a baby. Alice promises to think about it, but the conversation leaves her uneasy. That evening, the couple attends a fancy party organized by Frank. Alice feels out of place, especially when Frank keeps watching her from across the room while discussing things with Dr. Collins. Tension builds, and Alice feels herself on the edge of a breakdown. Things take a turn when a dancer appears, triggering another hallucination. As tears well up in her eyes, Alice asks Jack to take her home, but he ignores her, caught up in Frank's announcement. To her surprise, Frank calls Jack to join him on stage and announces his promotion. The celebration is too much for Alice, and she spirals into a full breakdown. She rushes to the bathroom where she once again sees the couple from her hallucinations. Bunny, ever watchful, arrives to check on her. Alice tries to explain everything, but Bunny cuts her off, scolding Alice for breaking the rules. She accuses Alice of trying to ruin Jack's big night and demands that she get herself together. Alice, feeling powerless, complies and returns to the routine she's been trapped in. A few days later, Jack hosts a dinner party at their home with Frank and Shelley among the guests. Alice is busy cooking when Frank approaches her, intrigued by her, and admitting he's always wanted someone to challenge him. He hopes Alice will push him further. During the dinner, Alice takes control of the conversation, sitting at the head of the table, her eyes locked on Frank. As the small talk begins, Alice disrupts the flow by asking the guests about their lives before moving to Victory. She points out the repetitive stories they all tell, suggesting that they're forced to forget their real pasts. Jack tries to stop her, but Frank encourages Alice to continue. Alice goes on a rant, accusing Frank of lying and creating a fake world. Frank remains calm, suggesting that Alice is suffering from the same psychosis Margaret had. He even accuses her of visiting his bedroom. The atmosphere grows tense, and Shelley snaps, calling Alice out for making a scene and insulting her husband. One by one, the other guests follow Shelley out, leaving Alice alone with Jack. Jack, furious, accuses Alice of sabotaging his night. Alice denies it, assuring him she cares more about him than this fake life in Victory. She begs him to leave with her, to escape before this place destroys their relationship. Jack finally agrees, and Alice rushes to pack, but just as they're about to leave, Jack shocks her with an apology. Alice doesn't understand why he's apologizing until the men in red show up to drag her away. Alice is taken to the hospital for electroshock therapy, and as the pain racks her body, she begins seeing those haunting visions of the couple again. This time she sees them living in the modern world, struggling with their lives. Alice remembers how she used to work as a doctor, but the job is taking its toll on her. When she comes home late one night, Jack is unsympathetic, making dinner a distant thought. The vision fades when Jack listens to Frank's podcast, promoting a new way for men to rediscover themselves. Alice wakes up in the Victory Hospital once again, and Dr. Collins announces she's been fixed and will return to her old routine. Days pass, and everything seems normal until one evening, when Jack starts humming that annoying song again. Alice suddenly remembers the lyrics, and this triggers a memory of her being dragged across an unfamiliar floor. It's then revealed that the Jack in her vision is real, and he's part of the Victory Project. He's connected to a special machine at home that creates their perfect life. Alice is hooked up to it 24/7, living in a simulated world. Jack only uses the machine for a few hours each day and works a low-level job to pay for their life. In Victory, Alice's body aches from the simulation as the images flood her mind. She confronts Jack, demanding an explanation. He defensively claims he did it for them, to give them the perfect life. He insists she's the crazy one and even says the kids aren't real. They're part of the simulation too. Jack falls to his knees, begging for forgiveness. But Alice, fed up with his lies, grabs a glass and strikes him to knock him out. Little does she know, dying in Victory means dying in real life. Jack's real body dies, and Frank is informed of his death. Bunny enters the house to calm Alice, covering Jack's body before revealing the truth. She chose the simulation because it was the only way to get her kids back after they died in real life. She explains that Alice needs to disconnect from the machine herself, as Jack can no longer do it for her. Alice, terrified but resolute, follows Bunny's instructions. The women start to notice the oddities in Victory, but the men remain focused on finding Jack and stopping Alice. Bunny fights off the men in red, giving Alice a chance to escape. She drives away, with the men hot on her trail. A high-speed chase ensues and Alice narrowly avoids crashing. In the desert, however, the men in red catch up and Dr. Collins accelerates to catch her. Alice crashes her car into theirs, causing a pileup. Meanwhile, Shelley, enraged by Frank's orders, stabs him, taking matters into her own hands. Alice drives deeper into the desert, but her car gets stuck. Determined, she runs up the hill to the dome where she sees the men closing in on her. As she reaches the top, she hallucinates Jack begging her to stay, but she remembers the truth, the real world, the real pain. With everything crashing down, Alice runs to the wall and presses her hands to the glass, letting the images wash over her one last time. As everything goes black, Alice gasps, and her fate remains uncertain. And to remain in nice stories, I recommend you click my recaps on the right next. Subscribe to return for future uploads. And as always, don't forget to grab your popcorn, enjoy yourself, and see you soon, my friend.